I'm going to have to interrupt this call. I understand we're going to go to a live picture in Los Angeles. Is that correct? Okay. This is Interstate 5, and this is courtesy of KCALR, one of our LA affiliates. Police believe that O.J. Simpson is in that car.
June 17th, 1994, 5 p.m. 95 million Americans locked onto their television screens. Every channel showed the same image: a white Ford Bronco crawling along Los Angeles' 405 freeway, 20 police cars trailing behind, 3 helicopters circling above. But nobody knew that in that Bronco's back seat, O.J. Simpson sat with a loaded gun in his hand, head pressed against the window, saying goodbye to his mother on the phone. Al Cowlings gripped the steering wheel, driving 30 miles per hour, enduring the longest 2-hour journey of his life. Because he'd made his friend a promise: "I'll get you to Rockingham, but don't pull that trigger." And during those 2 hours, while all of America watched live, the conversations inside that car were never broadcast, until now. Before I tell you what really happened inside that white Bronco, hit that subscribe button right now, because what you're about to hear isn't the sanitized media version. This is the truth about what O.J. Simpson told Al Cowlings during those 2 hours, what he confessed, what he planned, and why the gun in his hand never fired. Subscribe, because once you understand what happened inside that vehicle, you'll realize the whole world was watching the wrong story. That Friday morning started at Robert Kardashian's Encino mansion, where O.J. Simpson had been staying since Nicole Brown Simpson and Ron Goldman were murdered 5 days earlier on June 12th. The LAPD had issued an arrest warrant the day before, and attorney Robert Shapiro arranged for voluntary surrender at 11 a.m. at Parker Center downtown. But when 11 o'clock came, O.J. Simpson was gone. Kardashian discovered the empty bedroom around noon, found a note on the nightstand, and immediately called the police. That note would later be read on television by Robert Kardashian himself, shaking, emotional, defending his friend. "Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life, great friends." Please think of the real O.J. and not this lost person. But what the note didn't say was where O.J. had gone, or more importantly, what he'd taken with him. In the black duffel bag removed from Kardashian's house that morning, O.J. packed $8,750 in cash, his passport, a fake goatee and mustache disguise kit, family photos, and a Smith & Wesson .357 Magnum revolver loaded with 5 rounds. The gun wasn't for protection, it was for ending everything, because O.J. Simpson that morning had made a decision. He would drive to Nicole's grave at Ascension Cemetery in Lake Forest, kneel beside her headstone, and put a bullet through his own head. Let the world see what they'd driven him to. Let them understand he was innocent, that this persecution had killed him. That was the plan. But plans change when your oldest friend gets involved. Al Cowlings had known O.J. since they were kids growing up in San Francisco, played football together at Galileo High School, roomed together at USC, even played together briefly for the Buffalo Bills. If anyone could talk O.J. down from a ledge, it was AC when O.J. called him that morning from a payphone on Sunset Boulevard, voice shaking, saying he couldn't go to jail for something he didn't do. Cowlings didn't argue. Didn't try to convince him to surrender, just said, "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." By 1:30 p.m., Cowlings had picked up O.J. in his white 1993 Ford Bronco, and they were headed south on the 5 freeway toward Orange County, toward Nicole's grave, toward what O.J. believed would be his final destination. During that first 30 minutes of driving, before the police spotted them, before the helicopters arrived, before America tuned in, O.J. sat in the back seat with the gun resting on his lap and talked. He talked about Nicole, about how much he loved her, about how the world thought he was a monster when all he'd ever done was love her too much. He talked about the night of June 12th, about where he was, what he was doing, why the police had it all wrong. And Cowlings, eyes on the road, listening to his friend unravel, realized something terrifying. O.J. wasn't planning to turn around. This was a one-way trip. So Cowlings started talking too, started reminding O.J. of their childhood, of football games, of victories, of times when they were just 2 kids who could run faster than anyone else. Keep him talking, keep him alive, that's all that mattered. The LAPD spotted the white Bronco around 2:15 p.m. on the 5 freeway near the Artesia exit. A patrol unit ran the plates, recognized Al Cowlings' vehicle, and radioed in the sighting. Within minutes, unmarked detective cars began following at a distance, and orders came down from headquarters. Do not approach. Do not spook him. The passenger is potentially suicidal and armed. Just follow. By 2:45, news helicopters had picked up the chase, and television networks made the decision that would turn this into the most watched live event in American television history. They cut into regular programming and went live. The NBA Finals between the New York Knicks and Houston Rockets were airing that night, but NBC put a small box in the corner of the screen showing the white Bronco. Viewers could watch basketball, but their eyes kept drifting to that slow-moving vehicle on the Los Angeles freeway. Inside the Bronco, OJ had no idea the world was watching. Cowlings hadn't told him about the police cars behind them, hadn't mentioned the helicopters overhead. He just kept driving south, kept talking calmly, kept OJ focused on memories instead of the gun. But around 3 p.m., OJ looked out the back window and saw the line of police vehicles trailing them. His first reaction was panic. See, they're following us. They're gonna stop us. I can't go to jail. I can't. Cowlings, without taking his eyes off the road, said something that would define the next 2 hours. They're not gonna stop us, Juice. I talked to them. They know you need time. They're just making sure you're safe. We can keep driving as long as you need. It was a lie, partially. The police were following to contain the situation, not to give OJ time. But Cowlings knew if OJ felt cornered, that gun would come up, so he kept the lie going, kept driving, and prayed his friend wouldn't look up and see the helicopters. At 3:20 p.m., Cowlings' cell phone rang. It was LAPD Detective Tom Lange, one of the lead investigators on the Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman murder case. Lange had been trying to reach Cowlings for the past 30 minutes, and when the call finally connected, his voice was calm but firm. C. This is Tom Lange. I need to talk to OJ. Can you put him on? Cowlings glanced in the rearview mirror at OJ, who was staring out the window, gun still in his lap. Tom, he's not doing well. He's got a gun to his head. If I do anything sudden, he might pull the trigger. Lange took a breath. He'd been trained for hostage negotiations, but this was different. This wasn't a criminal holding someone else hostage. This was a man holding himself hostage. Okay, AC, I understand. Just keep him calm. Keep driving. We're not going to do anything to escalate this, but I need you to tell him something. Tell him his mother wants to talk to him. Tell him she's worried. Can you do that? Cowlings relayed the message. OJ's reaction was immediate. His mother, Eunice Simpson, was 72 years old, living in San Francisco, and the most important person in his life. Even in his darkest moment, the thought of his mother worrying about him broke through the fog. Let me talk to her, OJ said, reaching for the phone. For the next 10 minutes, while the white Bronco continued south on the 405 freeway at 30 miles per hour, OJ Simpson spoke to his mother. The conversation was never recorded, never made public, but Cowlings heard every word from the front seat. OJ told her he loved her, told her he was innocent, told her the police were trying to frame him, that he couldn't survive in prison, that this was the only way, and Eunice, crying on the other end, begged him to come home. Baby, please don't do this. Please don't hurt yourself. If you're innocent, the truth will come out. But I need you alive. Your children need you alive. When OJ hung up, he was crying, but the gun was still in his hand. By 4 p.m., word had spread across Los Angeles. Radio stations had picked up the story, local news had gone wall-to-wall coverage, and people started gathering on the freeway overpasses. At first, it was just a handful of curious onlookers, but within 30 minutes, hundreds of people lined the bridges above the 405, holding homemade signs. Go, Juice, go. We love you, OJ. Run, Juice, run. They were cheering, waving, treating it like a sporting event, because to them, OJ Simpson was still a hero. Still the Heisman Trophy winner, still the Buffalo Bills legend who broke 2,000 rushing yards in a season, still the charismatic Hertz rental car spokesman who jumped over airport chairs in commercials. The murder charges were just accusations. They didn't believe it. Their hero couldn't be a killer. Inside the Bronco, OJ saw the crowds, saw the signs, and something inside him broke even deeper. Because he understood what they didn't, those people were cheering for a version of him that no longer existed. They were supporting the OJ. From the commercials, from the football highlights, from the smile on magazine covers, they didn't know what he'd become. Didn't know about the rage that consumed him when Nicole started dating other men after their divorce. Didn't know about the night of June 12th when he'd driven to her Bundy condo and seen candles lit in the windows, evidence that she'd had another man over for dinner, the OJ. Those people were cheering for had died a long time ago, suffocated under jealousy and obsession and a desperate need to control what he'd already lost. And now they wanted him to run, to escape, to somehow win again. But there was no winning anymore, just different ways of losing. Cowlings saw OJ staring at the crowds, saw the tears streaming down his face, and made a decision. He had to change the destination. The original plan was to drive to Nicole's grave in Lake Forest, about 60 miles south, but at this pace, with the police following and the crowds growing, they'd never make it. More importantly, Cowlings realized that if OJ reached that grave, pulled the trigger while kneeling on Nicole's burial site, the image would be burned into history forever. The media was already everywhere. Helicopters would capture it all. OJ's children would see their father's suicide replayed on television for the rest of their lives. So Cowlings started talking again, started steering the conversation toward a different destination. Juice, listen to me. Your kids are at home, at Rockingham. They're waiting for you. They need to see you. You want to talk to them before you make any decisions, don't you? It was manipulation, but it was survival manipulation. And it worked. At 4:30 p.m., the white Bronco changed course. Instead of continuing south toward Orange County, Cowlings took the Sunset Boulevard exit and started heading west, back toward Brentwood, toward OJ's Rockingham estate. The LAPD noticed the direction change immediately, and Tom Lange called back. C, where are you going? Cowlings, with OJ. Listening in the back said, he wants to go home, Tom. He wants to see his house one more time. Can you let him do that? Can you give him that? There was silence on the line. Lange was calculating. If they could get OJ to Rockingham, to familiar territory, surrounded by memories and family, maybe they could talk him down. Maybe they could end this without bloodshed. Okay, AC, bring him home. But you need to promise me something. When you get there, you convince him to put down the gun and walk out. Can you do that? Cowlings looked in the mirror at OJ, who was staring out the window at the Los Angeles skyline, gun resting on his thigh. I'll try, Tom. That's all I can promise. Between 4:30 and 6 p.m., as the white Bronco crawled through Los Angeles traffic toward Brentwood, OJ Simpson started talking in a way he never had before. With the police behind him, helicopters above, and 95 million people watching on television, he opened up to Al Cowlings about the night of June 12th. The exact words will never be fully known because the conversation wasn't recorded, and Cowlings has spent 30 years refusing to give specific details. But investigators, family members, and journalists who've interviewed Cowlings over the decades have pieced together fragments, and what emerges is something disturbing. OJ didn't confess to murder in explicit terms, but he confessed to being there. He confessed to rage. He confessed to losing control. According to sources close to Cowlings, OJ said he'd driven to Nicole's condo that night around 10:15 p.m., parked down the street, and walked toward the front gate. He said he saw candles through the window and lost his mind, convinced she'd had another man inside. He said he went to the gate, not sure what he was going to do, maybe confront her, maybe just scare her, make her understand she was still his, even if they were divorced. And then, according to what Cowlings later hinted at in a deposition that was sealed by the court, OJ said, everything went red. AC, I don't remember what happened next. I just remember being back in the Bronco and there was blood. I don't know whose blood, I don't know how it got there. But when I got home, I had to hide the clothes, had to clean up, and I couldn't think straight. It wasn't a confession in the legal sense. It was the rambling of a man in crisis, possibly in psychological denial, possibly constructing a narrative that allowed him to live with himself. But Cowlings heard it heard his childhood friend, the man he'd looked up to for 40 years, essentially admit he'd been at Nicole's condo when she and Ron Goldman were slaughtered. And Cowlings made a choice in that moment. He didn't push for details, didn't ask, "Did you kill them, Juice?" because he didn't want to know. Because if OJ.O said yes, Cowlings would become an accessory. And if OJ said no, it would be a lie they'd both have to live with. So Cowlings just listened, let OJ unload, and kept driving toward Rockingham. At 6:27 p.m., the white Bronco turned onto Rockingham Avenue. The street was lined with police vehicles, media trucks, and hundreds of onlookers who'd gathered hoping to witness the end of the chase. Cowlings drove slowly up to the gate of OJ's estate, the massive white mansion with the circular driveway and manicured lawn. He put the Bronco in park, turned off the engine, and for the first time in 2 hours, there was silence. No helicopter noise, no police sirens, just quiet. Cowlings turned around and looked at OJ in the back seat. "We're home, Juice. We made it. Now you need to put down the gun and come inside with me." OJ stared at the house, at the life he'd built, at the trophies inside, the photos on the walls, the memories of when everything was perfect. And he said something that Cowlings would never forget. "This isn't home anymore, eh? See, home died with Nicole." For the next 30 minutes, O.J. Simpson sat in the back of that Bronco in his own driveway, gun in hand, refusing to get out. The police waited, the media filmed, the world watched. Inside the house, O.J.'s children, Arnell and Jason from his first marriage, waited by the window, crying, praying their father wouldn't kill himself 20 feet away. Detective Lange was on the phone with Cowlings, trying to negotiate a peaceful surrender. Let him talk to his kids, A, C, let them come out to the car. "Maybe that'll bring him back," Cowlings relayed the message. O.J. thought about it, then shook his head. "I can't let them see me like this. Tell them I'm sorry. Tell them I loved their mother, even if nobody believes it." The breakthrough came at 6:58 p.m. when O.J.'s longtime friend and former teammate Robert Kardashian arrived at Rockingham. Kardashian walked up to the Bronco, knocked on the window, and O.J. rolled it down. What they said to each other remains private, but witnesses reported seeing Kardashian crying, pleading, and O.J. finally nodding. At 7:15 p.m., 2 hours after the chase began, O.J. Simpson opened the car door, stepped out into his driveway, and handed the gun to Al Cowlings. He didn't hand it to the police, he gave it to his friend, one last act of trust. Then he walked into his house, drank a glass of orange juice, made a phone call to his mother to tell her he was alive, and at 8:50 p.m., he walked back outside and surrendered to LAPD officers. The chase was over, but the real story was just beginning. In the months and years that followed, everyone wanted to know what O.J. and Al Cowlings talked about during those 2 hours. The prosecution tried to get Cowlings to testify, to reveal if O.J. had confessed during the chase, but Cowlings invoked attorney-client privilege by claiming he was acting as an intermediary for O.J.'s legal team, and the judge ruled his conversations were protected. To this day, Al Cowlings has never publicly disclosed the full details of what O.J. said in that Bronco. He's hinted, he's danced around it. But he's never given the explicit confession that could have changed the trial. What we do know from police records and court testimonies is this: when O.J. was arrested that night, police searched the Bronco and found the gun, the $8,000 in cash, the passport, and the disguise kit. They also found a framed family photo of O.J., Nicole, and their 2 children, Sydney and Justin, taken years earlier when they were still happy. O.J. had been holding that photo during the chase, Cowlings later confirmed, holding it and crying. The prosecution argued that the contents of the car proved O.J. was attempting to flee the country, that he was guilty and running. The defense argued it proved he was suicidal and irrational, not calculating, and guilty. The jury never got to hear what O.J. said to Cowlings, and without that testimony, the prosecution's case had a hole. During the trial, which became a media circus that lasted 9 months, the white Bronco chase was referenced constantly. The image of that slow-speed pursuit became iconic, a symbol of celebrity justice, of America's obsession with fame and race. But the substance of what happened inside the vehicle was lost. The trial focused on DNA evidence, on the bloody glove, on Mark Fuhrman's racist language, on whether the LAPD had framed O.J. The conversations in the Bronco became a footnote. And when the jury delivered a not guilty verdict on October 3rd, 1995, after only 4 hours of deliberation, America split in half. Some believed justice was served. Others believed a murderer had walked free because he was famous. The white Bronco chase changed American media forever. It established the template for live breaking news coverage, for the 24-hour news cycle, for the celebrity trial spectacle. Before June 17, 1994, networks didn't interrupt programming for slow-speed car chases. After that day, everything changed. The chase also revealed something uncomfortable about American culture, our willingness to turn tragedy into entertainment. 95 million people watched not because they cared about justice for Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman, they watched because it was dramatic, because it was O.J. Simpson, because it was the greatest reality TV show ever broadcast. For O.J., the chase became part of his mythology. When he was acquitted in 1995, he tried to return to normal life, but the white Bronco followed him everywhere. People shouted, "Slow down, O.J.," when they saw him driving. Comedians made jokes. The Bronco itself became a museum piece, eventually sold to a collector. O.J. tried to write a book in 2006 called If I Did It, where he described a hypothetical version of how he would have murdered Nicole if he had done it. The book was published by the Goldman family after they won a civil lawsuit retitled "So If Was Tiny and I Did It Was Massive." It read like a confession disguised as fiction. In 2007, O.J. was arrested in Las Vegas for armed robbery. He was convicted and sentenced to 33 years, serving 9 before parole in 2017. O.J. Simpson died on April 10, 2024, at age 76 from prostate cancer. In his final years, when asked about the Bronco chase, he said, "That was the worst day of my life, not because of what happened, but because of what everyone thinks happened. I was innocent. But that chase made me look guilty, and I've never been able to escape it." Al Cowlings is still alive today, living quietly in Southern California. When asked directly if O.J. confessed during the chase, Cowlings says, "He told me things. Things I'll take to my grave. But whether he said I did it with those exact words, that's between me, him, and God." The white Bronco sits in storage today, occasionally exhibited at museums. People take photos with it, touch the door handles, peer into the back seat where O.J. sat with a gun in his hand. They want to feel connected to that moment when America stopped and watched, but they can't feel what happened inside. The confessions, the denials, the tears, the rage between two friends who'd known each other for 40 years. 30 years later, the question remains, what really happened inside that white Bronco? Did O.J. Simpson confess to murder? The answer depends on who you ask. Cowlings stays silent, protecting a secret that could rewrite history. But here's what we know for certain. On June 17, 1994, O.J. Simpson drove around Los Angeles for 2 hours with a loaded gun and a plan to kill himself. He told his best friend things he'd never told anyone else. And then, at the last moment, he chose to live. The white Bronco chase will be remembered forever, but what was said inside will remain a secret. And secrets never really stay buried. They haunt. They linger. Al Cowlings knows. And he's carrying it alone.